Holy Week began with the entrance into Jerusalem, and then Jesus cleansed the temple, and then came back every day and taught in the temple, where he took on the religious leaders, their attempts to discredit him, to try to prove that he was not who he said he was. And he told many parables, told parables about the keepers of the vineyard. But the last one he told was about the sheep and the goats, and a reminder that in God's eyes, the righteous are those who look out for the homeless and the hungry and the thirsty and the imprisoned and the sick, those who tend to be on the outs in our society. After saying these things, Jesus said to his disciples, after a couple of days, the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man is to be handed over and crucified. Then the chief priests and the elders gathered at the high priest's house, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and to kill him. But they said, not during the festival. Otherwise, there might be a riot amongst the people. Now, while Jesus was in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, a woman came with a jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on Jesus' head as he sat at the table. And the disciples got angry. It's like, why this waste? This ointment could have been sold for a large sum of money and the money given to the poor. But Jesus said, why do you trouble this woman? She has performed a great service for me. You will have the poor with you always, but you will not always have me. By what she has done, she has anointed my body for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her. Then Judas went to the chief priests and said, how much will you give me if I betray him to you? And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. From that moment on, he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. On the first day of unleavened bread, Jesus' disciples came and asked him, where do you want us to go and prepare the Passover meal for you? And Jesus said, go into the city to a certain man and say, the teacher says, my time is near. Then tell him, he will take the Passover and eat it at your house this evening. So the disciples went as they were directed, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, Jesus came and sat with the 12. And he said, one of you will betray me this evening. And they all got very agitated and said, Lord, surely not I. And Jesus said, one who has dipped his hand in the bowl with me will betray me. For it must go, as the scriptures say, it must go for the Son of Man. But for that one who betrays me, it would have been better for him if he had never been born. Then Judas said to Jesus, Rabbi, surely not I. And Jesus said, you have said so. While they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after giving thanks, broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it for them all to drink, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins. Truly I tell you, I will not drink this fruit of the vine again till I drink it with you in the kingdom. When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, all of you will fall away because of me this very night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But Peter said, even if all fall away, I will never fall away. And Jesus said, Peter, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said, even if I must follow you to death, I will never deny you. And so said all of them. When they came to the place called Gethsemane, Jesus said to the disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. So he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, James and John, and began to be grieved and agitated. He said, remain here and stay awake with me. Then going on a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me. But not what I want, but what you want. Returning to them, he found them asleep. He said to Peter, so you could not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. For indeed the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Then for a second time, he went and prayed. Said, if I must drink this cup for it to pass, let your will be done. Returning again, he found them asleep because their eyes were very heavy. A third time he went and prayed using the same words. Then he returned and say, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Get up, for the time has come for the Son of Man to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Let us go, for look, my betrayer is at hand. And while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came with a large crowd carrying swords and clubs. Now, Judas had given them a sign. He said, the one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. So at once he came up to Jesus and said, greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. And then they laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those with Jesus suddenly put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. But Jesus said, put away your sword. Those who take up the sword will die by the sword. Do you not think that I couldn't but call my Father in heaven, and he would send more than 12 legions of angels? Then he said to the crowd, you have come out with swords and clubs as if I were a rebel. Yet day after day I sat teaching in the temple, and you did not arrest me. But it must happen this way so that the scriptures might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples fled and deserted him. Those who arrested Jesus brought him to the high priest, Caiaphas. All the chief priests and elders of the people were assembled. And they were looking for false testimony to condemn him, but they could not find any, even though there were many false witnesses that came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and said, we heard this fellow say that I can destroy the temple and build it, the temple of God, and build it again in 3 days. Then the high priest said to Jesus, have you nothing to say? What do you say to these accusations? And Jesus was quiet. Then Caiaphas said, I put you under oath before the living God. Are you the Messiah, the Son of God? And Jesus said, You have said so. But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming on the clouds of heaven." When he heard this, the chief priest ripped his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have all heard his blasphemy. What do you think?" And they all agreed he deserved to die. Then they spat in his face, and they hit him with reeds. And some slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Tell us who it was that slapped you." Now, Peter was out in the courtyard. He had followed as far as the courtyard and had gone in and sat down with the guards to see how this would turn out. And as he was sitting there, a female servant saw him and came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus from Galilee." And Peter denied it in front of everyone, saying, I don't know what you're talking about." And then going out to the porch, he sat down, and another female servant saw him and began to say to the bystanders, "He also is with Jesus the Nazarene." And again, Peter denied it, swearing an oath, saying, "I do not know the man." A little while later, the bystanders came up to him and said, "Certainly you were with him. Your accent betrays you." And Peter cursed and swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that very moment, he heard the cock crow. And he remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. When it was morning, the chief priests and the leaders conferred together as to how to put Jesus to death. Then they bound him and led him to the governor. When Judas saw that Jesus had been condemned, he repented. And he brought the money back to the chief priests and said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." And the chief priest said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." So he took the money and threw it on the floor of the temple and went out and he hanged himself. And as the chief priests were picking up the money, they said, "What are we going to do with this money? We can't put it in the treasury because it's blood money." So then they agreed that they would buy the potter's field. It would be a place to bury foreigners. For this reason, that field is called the Field of Blood to this day. And this fulfilled the word spoken to the prophet Jeremiah, that 30 pieces of silver, the price for him who has a price on his head, will be used to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded. Now Jesus stood before the governor, Pilate. And the governor asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said, "You have said so." Then the chief priests and the other religious leaders started making lots of accusations against Jesus. But Jesus was silent. And Pilate asked him, "Have you no defense? What do you say to the accusations that they have made?" Again, Jesus gave no answer, not to a single charge, so that Pilate was amazed. Now, during the festival, Pilate was accustomed, or Pontius Pilate was accustomed to releasing a prisoner for the people, anyone that they chose. Now, there was a notorious prisoner named Jesus Barabbas. So when the people had gathered, the governor asked them, whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus the Messiah? For he knew that it was out of jealousy that the religious leaders had handed him over. While he was sitting in the judgment seat, he got word from his wife that said, have nothing to do with this innocent man, for I've been deeply grieved by a dream I've had about him. Now, the chief priests and other religious leaders had persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and for Jesus to die. So again, Pilate asked them, whom do you want me to release for you? And they all shouted, Barabbas. Pilate said, why? What evil has he done? And they shouted all the more, Barabbas. And he said, well, what then shall I do with Jesus the Messiah? And they shouted, crucify him, crucify him. When Pilate saw that there was nothing for him to do, and instead a riot was beginning, he got a bowl, washed his hands in front of them all, and said, I am innocent of this man's blood. It is up to you. Then the crowd shouted as a whole, let his blood be upon us and our children. Then Pilate, after flogging Jesus, released him to them and also released Jesus Barabbas. Now the governor's guards, soldiers, took him to the governor's headquarters. And there they gathered the whole cohort around. And they stripped him of his clothes and put a scarlet cloak on him. Twisting some thorns, made a crown and put that on his head. Then they put a reed in his right hand. And they bowed down and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. After mocking him, they took the reed and began to strike him and to spit on him. And after they mocked him, they stripped him of his robe, put his clothes back on, and led him out to be crucified. And as they went out, they ran across a man from Cyrene called Simon, and they compelled him to carry Jesus' cross. When they came to Golgotha, which means the skull, they offered Jesus some wine mixed with gall to drink. But after tasting it, he didn't drink any of it. Then they crucified him. When they had crucified him, they took his clothes and cast lots and divided amongst them. And then they sat down and kept watch over him. There were two rebels who were crucified with Jesus, one on his right and one on his left. And those who were passing by mocked and derided Jesus, shaking their heads saying, "So you could destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Come down from there. If you are the Son of God, save yourself." So also the chief priests and other religious leaders mocked him in the same way, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself. He is the King of Israel. Come down from that cross now and we'll believe in you. He trusted God. Let God save him. For he said, 'I am God's son.'" In the same manner, the rebels on either side taunted him. From noon on, darkness covered the land until 3 o'clock. About 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Those who were near him thought he was crying out for Elijah. And one of them ran at once and got a sponge and filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and offered it to him. But others said, "Wait, let's see if Elijah comes and saves him." Then Jesus cried out with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that very moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And there was an earthquake, and the rocks were split, and tombs were opened, and some of the faithful dead who were sleeping were raised. When the centurion and those who were with him saw the earthquake and what had happened, they said, "Truly, this is God's Son." Now, there were some women who had come up from Galilee following Jesus and who had ministered to him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. And they sat looking on from a distance. When it was evening, a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph went to the governor and asked for the body of Jesus. And the governor ordered that it be given to him. So Joseph went and took down the body. And he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth. and he placed it in his new tomb. He had hewn out of the rock. Then he rolled a large stone over the entrance. And then he went away. But Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sat opposite the tomb and watched.